everybody, Benwoodruff here with another falconry video. Today's video, I'm going to be talking about Taita falcons, which I've done videos on them before. There's not very many videos out there about them. In fact, if you just look on YouTube under Taita falcon, the bulk of long and short videos are of Rahara here. So I wish we knew more about them, and I've had a lot of time to learn about them, and I want to share some of this. I've had Rahara for a year or two now. She is old. Hey, I'm not ripping on you. You're not that old. She's very old. I can't remember. She's like 12, 13, 14 years old. I got her from a breeding program where she had been breeding for years, and she had stopped laying eggs for a couple of years, and usually at that point they kind of tank, and her mate died, so I ended up with her. And it was an opportunity to work with a bird that there's probably only like 400 to 600 pairs of them in the world. It's a very rare, very highly specialized falcon. They only live in Africa, and they only live typically next to waterfalls where they like to hunt swifts and swallows and bats, where they'll dive down and they'll catch them and then use the updrafts to buoy them back up. Now, I'm making this video to kind of do a review and just talk a little bit about my feelings about this species, but also I'm working on a big monster video right now, and it's going to take me several more weeks, maybe another month to kind of get through it all. I'm researching Hobbies. Hobbies are a group of falcons that I haven't given much thought to. And as I've researched, and I've done videos before talking about how Oplomato falcons and New Zealand falcons and Australian brown falcons are very closely related. But I haven't thought much about hobbies. So hobby falcons, I grew up knowing about the Eurasian hobby. And I was taught in the old falconry books back in the days before the internet that hobbies were not used as a falconry bird during medieval times. They were used instead to catch sparrows, but what would happen is a falconer would fly them up above and spook the sparrows into a bush, and then the falconers would go and throw a net over the bush and then pull the sparrows out and take them home and eat them, roast them up like just little Thanksgiving turkeys. And so they weren't really used in medieval traditional falconry, which is most of the books before the internet, when I grew up in the 1900s, the books about falconry, they were based off of European falconry. So there wasn't a lot of more information other than that. So I haven't thought much about hobbies, but as I've done a deep dive researching them and finding who's related to what, it will blow your mind when I get into it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. All the members of the hobby family and all the hobbies that diverged off, things like Eleonora's falcons and sooty falcons, some of the other ones, and you'll love this video when I put it together. They all have a really weird kind of dumpy face. It's like their eyes, the placement of their eyes and their skull are kind of weird looking, and most of them, their beaks look like they ran into a wall. They have sort of a snub beak. So why am I bringing that up? Well, first and foremost, when you go down the list of the hobbies and the sister clades to hobbies and who derived from what genetically, and as we're doing gene sequencing and finding out who's related to what, it turns out that there's a lot of birds that I never would have thought come from that lineage. And all of them, it makes sense, and you can't unsee it after the fact. But there are scientists who are trying to also say that Taita falcons came from that lineage. Now let's talk about the difference. A hobby, just a baseline hobby falcon, hobbies are long, they're gangly, they're narrow, they're not broad-chested, they're super narrow, they're super gangly, very long tails, ridiculously long wing feathers, especially the primary feathers, to the point where their wings, they almost look a little misshapen. And they all have that odd-shaped head from a front view that kind of looks like they ran into a wall and their eyes are here. I think of a peregrine falcon, the head shape of a peregrine falcon, that is a classic falcon, proper falcon. And all these hobbies and all their sister lineages that you can see it in their face. You can see how they derive differently. But everything about them is wispy and fast and flighty and just gentle, and they can fly. They almost don't even have to flap. They're just fast, maneuverable, agile, and wispy. Taita falcon is everything and opposite. A Taita falcon, this bird, I just weighed her I weighed her hard before coming out here to make this video, and she was in the mid 300s of grams. Like, she, for a bird this size, she's like, 100, 150 grams heavier than a merlin or a kestrel. Like, she, look at the size of this bird, and if you can see from front, she is barrel chested. She is broad, and the musculature on these falcons is enormous. The tail is tiny, and the secondaries are very short. The primaries are very long. Everything about this to me says everything opposite of what a hobby should be, but that might not be the case. Now, as I look at some things, I cannot help but look at the face from the front. Taita Falcons do have that smushed face. And the tail feathers they're a little too long and a little too narrow, and the secondaries are a little too short, that is kind of like a hobby. But I've read a genetic report that said Taita Falcons did evolve directly from peregrines and are genetically considered to be the most recent of all falcons. And they are so closely related to peregrine falcons that they genetically could even be considered a subspecies of peregrine. Not its own species, but the Taita Falcon could technically be considered a subspecies of peregrine. They have been successfully hybridized with peregrines with no problems, so clearly they're closely related. There is a lot to be said. If you look at this bird, when my video comes out, and again, it might be another month and a half, but when it comes out, when you're looking at particularly like Oriental hobbies and Australian hobbies and some of these, when you look at the coloration, it's hard not to see the similarities. But similarities are not always the answer to everything. You can have convergent evolution. So it very much depends. I think this bird has peregrine feet. I think it has a peregrine build, and genetics don't lie. So I'm going to have to do more digging and see if there are any more papers on the genome sequences of these Taita Falcons, because if they're not coming from a hobby lineage, which again, everything they hunt, they're hunting swifts and swallows and bats and insects. Well, that's what hobbies do. But if you're the right size, that's what you're going to go after. If they are from the hobby lineage, then they branched off. They must have just branched off way early on, because it's like if you cross everything about a hobby with everything about a peregrine and mushed them together, and that doesn't make sense. Ironically, too, there is genetic evidence to suggest that the orange-breasted falcon is also like the king of the hobby lineage, which just messes with me. They have a bigger feet than peregrines compared to their body. They have the biggest spread, foot-wise, of any falcon is the orange-breasted falcon. But yet they may have evolved from this tiny lineage of the hobby falcons. Now, if that's true, then that would be comparable to rodents. Most rodents are small, mice and rats and, squirrels and tree squirrels and ground squirrels. But then you have things like capybaras in South America that are like the size of a giant pig. Hi, I'm a rodent. I'm a capybara. You're a rodent. Uh-huh. That's what an orange-breasted falcon would be. If orange-breasted falcons did indeed come from the hobby lineage, then wow, it's amazing what things can do when nature goes its way. But back to Taita Falcons. Taita Falcons, everybody I've seen and everybody I've talked to who's worked with them besides me, and again, I've had a very limited amount of time with her, and again, I have been taking it easier on her because she's very, very old, and I want to learn as much from her as possible in the time I have her. I don't want to push her too hard in any way. So learning about this bird, Taita Falcons are social, and the closest I can give to what it's like to work with them is burrowing owls. I've worked with a lot of burrowing owls over the years, and the socialness and the happiness to be around you and the playful behavior that seems it's out of the norm for a raptor, but that's what they're like. They are playful and they're fun. They're goofy. And they enjoy being around. They enjoy just hanging around and walking around. In addition to enjoying just like walking around and hanging around, they get fat so easily. I don't think she could fly right now. I have her fattened up a little to try to start a molt early on, and I don't think she can fly. Taita Falcons, if they're just the slightest bit overweight, they fly and they fly like 10 feet and land on the ground. So getting that, they're so well muscled, but they get overweight super easy and their wings are undersized. Kind of think of, in one sense, like a chicken, but a chicken with a jetpack. Chickens can fly a little bit, but if they had momentum going, these birds are streamlined and slick and aerodynamic, unlike a chicken. So, but when she's a spat, her flight is literally like a chicken. When she flies over to me, she and lands on the ground and walks over to me. It's nuts. So, very strange bird. I'm going to keep doing digging on the genetics because I am fascinated and I am very curious if they are indeed closely related to hobbies or closely related to peregrines. And again, the genetics seem to be how it is. Genetics don't lie. They seem to be closely related to peregrines and have derived from that line. But there's a lot of things about them that just don't quite add up, and that says they could be from the hobby lineage. So, Taita Falcons, Pete Jungerman crossbred them with Barbary falcons, and those were some amazing birds from everything I hear. And I wish we had more people breeding Taita Falcons in America and hybridizing them, because I think they add a lot of muscle and a lot of power. But if you got a more buoyant bird, like again, crossing them with a peregrine, crossing them with a Barbary. I know Pete for years was trying to cross them with Merlins, but he could never get the timing quite right because it was with artificial insemination. I thought that would have been an amazing hybrid. But they have their abilities, but it seems like their real strength comes from a dive, from being up and having momentum and letting that momentum carry you through. That is true of all falcons, but I think it's more true with the Taita Falcon than any other bird, any other falcon. There is no other falcon that has this much weight compared to this narrow and small of wing size. Really absolutely incredible birds, and the colors are just so striking. So my thoughts after working with her for a while: these birds are an absolute joy to work with. They're an absolute joy to teach with. Getting them up and hunting is difficult because they have to be dialed in exactly to the right amount, or literally they cannot fly. I think they have a great possibility and potential for use in hybrids, falconry hybrids, and I would highly recommend anybody who has the ability to do so, because there's not many people here in the States that are breeding them. So I think that would be great. But I've absolutely loved working with Rahara. I've had a joyful time with her, and I thank you to everybody who made it possible for me to get her. A few years ago, she has been an absolute blast to work with, and I hope she has many more years left in her. But again, she is getting older, and don't know how much time I have left with her, which is kind of a sad thought. But she's taught me a lot about the species. So, very social around people, social around animals. Just likes to sit. Just likes to perch and sit around in the house and just hang around, and she prefers to be inside to outside, even in the summertime. Just how she is. So a glorious species. Just wanted to kind of give some thoughts and some updates, and again, be watching up ahead because I will have a video. This video is going to be so big. I think what I'm going to do, I think I might make separate videos of each species in this lineage, and then do one big video with all of them combined as a whole, so that people can get both. Because some people love my short videos, some people love my ridiculously long videos, but some of the research I'm having to do with this is taking me so much time that it might be nice to just kind of get them out bit by bit by bit. So anyways, those are some thoughts. If you haven't already, I'd very much appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, because it does help me keep this up and going. And if you have any comments, if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts or any ideas, you want to collaborate, you can send an email to benwoodrufffalconry@gmail.com. I'm trying to get to those as soon as I can, but just for different thoughts, questions, and ideas, it's always there. And hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know your comments down below. And as always, happy hawking.